Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, it's a treat. And I was like, is this like episode, interview 4 or 5, maybe even?
It's great. I always love being on this show. It's a wonderful opportunity.
Well, you're always writing something new and exciting, and I love it. And, whenever I saw that you had Tranquility by Tuesday, I was like, all right, Laura, gotta have you back. So this is
It,
lovely.
oh, thank you. Well, it's a good word. We're all seeking tranquility, whether it be du jour or, on Tuesday or any other day of the week.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and I'm curious because you have written so many books. Of course, my foray into you was 168 hours, which, I have recommended for years because I just think it's so good. And, you've written so much about time management. So I was like, I wonder what led to this one, right? The 9 ways to calm the chaos and make time for what matters. So give us a little background.
Yeah. So, I give a lot of time management advice out there. I've done a lot of time makeovers, looked at thousands of people's schedules at this point. And I realized at some point in the course of this that often I was giving some of the same advice. Even though people's lives are very different, I was telling a lot of people that, it would help if you did X, and X was sort of the same from person to person. So I decided to start honing this down to what are the things that I wind up saying most frequently, and wound up choosing 9 rules. And I think these 9 rules are broadly applicable, generally helpful for people who, feel like they have perhaps less time than they might wish, to help them make the most of the time that they have and to enjoy their lives as they do so. But since I write self-help for busy people, I didn't want to just, put out like, these are Laura's 9 favorite rules. Enjoy. So, I was trying to do some original research with my work. And so I recruited 150 people to try out these 9 rules over the course of 9 weeks. They would learn a rule, answer questions about how they would implement it in their lives. I would check back a week later. They would answer questions on how it went. We did this for 9 weeks with 9 rules. I could measure them on various dimensions before and after. And I'm happy to report that when people do follow these rules, their time satisfaction rises to a fair degree. So that's pretty exciting. I'm happy to report that these, rules do work. They do help you achieve, tranquility by Tuesday.
Super exciting. And I love that, right? Because so often we're like, I think these would be 9 rules based on my experience. So let me just put that out there. But asking 150 people and then the before and after is just so smart.
Well, I want to find out if stuff works, right? It's really as simple as that. And, it was a bit of work to coordinate that as a study and get the results from it. But the upside is that people told me so many amazing things. Just the observations people had on their lives before. And as they talked about how they were going to implement these rules and the challenges they face, I felt like to a large degree, the book sort of wrote itself because I just had so much raw material to work with.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's so smart. And you know what I really like too is that in the book you have like, and I just wrote them down over here, right? The next step suggestions, right? Because sometimes we read something, we're like, oh, that's a great idea. Okay, next chapter. And then you also have the planning questions and implementation questions, right? So it's not just like, here's a rule, do this, it'll make everything great. You have these additional kind of pieces at the end of each chapter to help people really infuse it into their days.
Yeah, well, I want people to try these rules. That's why I have them listed out. I think the material is presented in a very practical way. Like, here's an idea, here's why it might be helpful, here's how you can do it, here are some challenges you might face. So, I wanted people to, as much as possible, be able to replicate what my survey participants did, right? So that, I know that overall they saw their time satisfaction scores rise. So if I want people trying these rules out at home to see the same thing, they probably need to go through the same process. So yeah, I put the questions that are pretty similar to what people were asked in my survey at the end of each chapter. And the idea is that you ask yourself these questions as you're figuring out how the rule might work in your life. Because it forces you to sort of think through the logistics of it and think about what could go wrong and how you will deal with what will go wrong. And then a week later to just follow up and say, well, did it work? Did it not? Did you experience the challenges you thought you would, or were there entirely different ones? What did you do to deal with it? What will you do in the future with this rule? So I hope that will help people be a bit more mindful as they put these rules into practice in their lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I'm curious, is there one rule in particular that your survey participants just found to be the most helpful?
Well, I put them in a certain order,
Mm.
the 9 rules, that they're not entirely random. I think they're all helpful. But the first rule is to give yourself a bedtime. And the reason this is in there first is because bringing a sense of order to the time of all of our days is just a fundamental, like foundational habit for taking control of your time. On just a practical level, it's hard to do anything if you are exhausted. And one of the best ways we can keep our energy levels up and feel like life is more doable and more enjoyable is to get enough sleep. And since most adults can't really change the time they wake up in the morning, they have to get up at a certain time because of work or family responsibilities. The only variable you can change is what time you go to bed the night before. And, many people skimp on sleep during the beginning of the week and then spend the rest of the week catching up. They crash, they, nap on weekends, sleep in on weekends, and then the cycle starts all over again because they can't go to bed at their bedtime on Sunday night because they slept in Sunday morning. And, then they start Monday sleep deprived, and the whole thing begins again. So it's much better to get the amount of sleep you need every single night. So I have people figure out what time they need to wake up, figure out how much sleep they need, count back from the time they need to wake up. This is just a math problem. It's not a statement of anything else, like how much fun you are or what kind of person you are. It's just a math problem. And then figure out ways to wind down in time to have the lights off by your set bedtime. And when people did this, I mean, their energy levels rose significantly. About a quarter more people in my study said they were getting enough sleep to handle their responsibilities from the beginning of the project to the end. I mean, and that is really a huge change when you look at large numbers of people, to have that big a proportion moving from feeling like they're exhausted to feeling like they aren't. I mean, so I think, as somebody put it, this was the least sexy but the most helpful rule. Like, there's others that are a lot more clever and get at interesting things, but getting enough sleep every single night is probably the best change you will ever make in your life.
Yes, so, so important. And I love it. Really, it is a math problem. Even as you say, this has stuck with me for years, right? The 168 hours. And I'm like, okay, if you sleep this much, you work this much, right? There's usually like 40 some odd hours left over. And you're like, where is that time going? Again, a math problem, but so, so smart to like really break it down.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, the good news is that much of the reason people tend to stay up later at night, I mean, we all do this. It's when you finally have me time. Like, people who have kids, it's after the kids go to bed, then they can do what they want. Or after you've done your chores or done your work, it's like, okay, now this late night time is time I can have for myself. And so I know most of us don't want to cut it short to go to bed, but a lot of the other rules are designed to give you more rejuvenating leisure, more me time through the rest of your life, more of a sense that you are having time for yourself, so that you don't have to stay up late during the week in order to get it and then crash on weekends and start the cycle all over again.
Well, and I remember that's one of the big things from your book about weekends, right? Was like not to sleep in. And, that's stuck with me also, that yeah, we do. That's not our catch up time, right? That's like supposed to be our downtime.
It's supposed to be our fun time. And if you have to spend the entire weekend sleeping in order to make up this time from the week, like, you better hope that the time you got during the week was like really awesome in order to justify missing out on big chunks of your weekend. And unfortunately, that usually just isn't the case. We're just watching the next show on Netflix. We're scrolling around for another 30 minutes. And I don't think that's really a worthwhile trade off.
And I don't know if you have had this experience or if people who were completing the survey, but sometimes like I find myself just scrolling and I'm like, it's because I'm too tired to put the phone down and do my evening routine or just turn the lights out. I'm like, that is pathetic, but interesting, huh?
Yeah, well, what happens is that our level of discipline kind of deteriorates as we get more tired, and so some people, that was actually one of the challenges that people brought up. This is the wonderful thing about having 150 people's observations, is that people experience all these different things, and so one of the things they did experience is staying up late because they're too tired to do anything else, and so people came up with solutions like getting ready for bed earlier in the evening, right? Like, if you need to be in bed at 11 and you get ready at say 9:30, right right after you've turned a child's lights out. Well, now you're not stopping yourself at 10:50 to go get ready for bed. You could just be in your bed already. I mean, you probably get up to go to the bathroom before the end of it, but that's all you have to do. And so that just makes it a lot more easy.
Yeah, I love that because it's I've worked with a client who was really having a hard time doing an evening routine. And I was like, well, what about whenever you come home from work? I always like to just change out of my work clothes, put on something super comfortable, wash my face, and it's just like, well, I'm almost set up for the evening without like having to have a huge routine, but it just like it shifts. It's like you take off one hat, and even if you're working from home, you can do this. You take off one hat and then you put on your hat of like leisure evening at home, right? Or preparing for bed.
Yeah, no, that can definitely help people.
Well, and the second rule is this idea of planning on Fridays. I find so interesting because I've always encouraged people to plan Sunday night. So tell us a little bit about why Friday.
Yeah. So the most important part of this rule is to plan. I think everyone needs a designated weekly planning time. You need to get in the habit of having a time each week where you look forward to the next week, the whole week, and see what's going on in your life. Decide what's most important. Make sure that you are making steps toward your goals. Make sure you have a time for those things. Solve any logistical problems you need to solve. Looking at the whole week, not just day by day, but the whole week. So that's the most important part. And if somebody's like, Sunday night it's rocking for me, I don't want you to change anything that's actually working. But if you don't have a time, or you are doing this on Sunday and have some issues with it, I can suggest Friday for a couple reasons. One, it's many people waste Friday afternoons. If you work a Monday through Friday job, often by Friday afternoon, we're kind of sliding into the weekend. It is very difficult to start anything new. And yet you might be willing to think about what future you should be doing. And so taking a few minutes to plan the upcoming week can turn what might be wasted time into very productive minutes. Unlike Sunday night, it is during business hours. So if you find that you need to make an appointment somewhere, if you need to contact someone to set up a meeting, they're going to be more responsive to that, or the office will be open on Friday afternoon, which they will not be on Sunday night. So, if you're trying to set up a Monday meeting, like, you wait until Sunday night to do that, it may not be confirmed, right? You may not be able to set your Monday around that. And so I think trying to have a plan by the end of Friday is good. But I think the biggest problem with Sunday is that, even people who like their jobs can start feeling a little bit of trepidation on like Sunday afternoon. Not that they don't want to work on Monday. It's just that they've got a lot of stuff. They know there's so much stuff that they're going to have to deal with, but they don't have a plan to do it. And if you don't have a plan, some part of your brain is always just twirling through it, figuring it out, wondering what it should be doing, weighing different options. If you end the work week on Friday afternoon with a plan for Monday, then you don't have to think about it and worry about it. And you can help your brain relax a little bit more. And so I find it may help a little bit with those Sunday scaries.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh yeah, it's the whole Sunday scaries. And I've always looked at this from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right? Not like someone who is going into an office or, has more of a corporate job. And so that makes it makes so much more sense, that Friday, right? You're in your business world, and then it's like, okay, you can rest with ease on Sunday night without like getting worked up on everything that's on your list for Monday waiting for you.
Yeah. And I mean, your idea of Sunday is better than Monday. Okay. I'll put it. And so when you're teaching people to do it Sunday night, it's like, well, to move them back from doing it Monday morning, because then you get to use more of your Monday. Like if you go into Monday with a plan, you are able to fully execute with your Monday morning energy on whatever it is you need to do. And Monday tends to be a great time for making, whatever it is that needs to happen first. But I'm saying just move it back even a little bit further, right? That, go from Sunday back to the business hours, and use that time.
Yeah. And it protects your weekends, right?
Protects your weekend. Yeah.
Even as an entrepreneur, we become our worst boss, right? But it's like you need downtime too to like, not be thinking about work on Sunday night. So I like that. That's really helpful. And this idea of moving by 3 p.m., right? Of course we know we need to move. And yet so many people, we save it to the end of the day. And then by then we're too exhausted, or even for a creative project, we're like, okay, I'm going to work on that novel after work today, right? You're not.
You're
I mean,
not.
probably you're too tired.
You're too tired. Yeah, no, anything that needs to happen probably needs to happen first. But the idea of moving by 3 p.m., I'm not, trying to make sure everyone wakes up at 6 a.m. to exercise. I do not wake up at 6 a.m. to exercise most days. It is more about fitting in more physical activity into our lives. And by nudging ourselves to do it in the first half of the day, we do it before the day sort of falls apart. It also nudges people to take a break. Like if you have a sedentary job, like where can you fit in 10 minutes of physical activity in, before mid-afternoon? And just having that time, it also is if you haven't moved by 3 p.m., 3 p.m. is a really good time to do it, because that's when most people's energy levels hit a dip in the course of the day. And so if you get up, get some physical activity, maybe even get outside as well, you will probably boost your energy, boost your mood, not need to rely on things like coffee or candy bars or cigarettes or whatever else that people do to boost their energy in mid-afternoon.
It's funny you say that, because I remember like 20 plus years ago working at a law firm, and it was around that time I always hit the vending machine.
Yep.
I get like a Butterfinger, and I'm like, okay, this didn't quite do it. Maybe I need a honey bun too.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, you keep trying something else. Well, and that's the crazy thing. Like, I mean, people spend so much time and effort and energy, like and money trying to make themselves happier and more energetic. And I'm like, here's something that we know will do it with no cost whatsoever. And it works like 90% of the time. I mean, more than any like drugs you're going to take. So yeah, just a short burst of physical activity. And if people doubt me, like just try it out. Just try moving for 10 minutes every single day before 3 p.m. and see what happens. I'm willing to bet that your life will start to feel a little bit different.
yeah. Yeah. Because, right, there's that whole TED talk on sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, yeah, we got to move. And, I like this too, the one big adventure, one little adventure. I was like, oh, I love that she's throwing in a lot of fun too.
Of course. Well, I want life to not feel like a slog. So, I mean, after I have a section on building foundational habits, like that we just talked about, of getting enough sleep and planning our weeks and getting some physical activity, there's all sorts of other rules that are about planning fun things into our lives, things that we will genuinely look forward to. And this particular rule is to have one big adventure and one little adventure each week. And the reason for this is that as we get older, much of life seems to feel the same day to day. We get up, we get ready, we get everyone off where they're going, we work or do our other responsibilities, collect everyone at the end of the day, do the, dinner, homework with the kids or whatever, baths, bedtime, TV, crash, do it all over again. And there's nothing wrong with routines. I mean, good routines make good choices automatic. But when too much of this sameness stacks up, then you wind up with these like whole years disappearing into memory sinkholes. Like nothing new happens, and time just seems to accelerate. And this rule is designed to combat a little bit of that. So each week, 2 adventures. A big adventure means 3 to 4 hours, taking half a weekend day. A little adventure could be less than an hour, something that you could do on a lunch break or weekday evening, as long as it is out of the ordinary. And the reason to do these 2 things is it's a good balance. Like it will make life more interesting. You'll have interesting stuff to look forward to and to remember, but it's not going to exhaust or bankrupt anyone, right? Like we're not going to do 4-hour adventures every single day. I mean, that might be fun, but that's a vacation. Like this is talking about how we can make normal life, like make our Tuesdays a little bit more exciting.
Yeah. You know what this makes me think of too, and I'm sure you've read the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and this idea of like an artist's date, a way to just like nurture your creative side, or, however you define adventure. But I really like this.
And put in new inputs into your life. I mean, it's what makes, life still interesting, makes our brains pay attention as time keeps passing by. So yeah, take yourself bowling or mini golfing or whatever it is that you want to do. But anything that will make you say, not like, oh, yet another week. It was like, no, that was the week we went mini golfing. That was the week we tried the new gelato place, whatever it is.
Yeah, so important, right? To have these new experiences so that it's not Groundhog Day. That's like so sad. And I think that it happens for so many of us, just like, we just fall into ruts.
Exactly. It's very easy to fall into a rut. So I don't want anyone to be in a rut. I want them to feel like, Tuesday is interesting. Tuesday is a day you can look forward to. You have something cool happening on a normal Tuesday.
Some tranquility, maybe.
Tranquility, even.
So what about, I like this because I think this is such an important piece, is batching the little things, right? And it's interesting you say little things because, I always hear batch like everything, right? So tell us a little bit about batching in general and then why the little things.
Yeah. So after we, have these various rules, a bunch of different rules about putting fun things into our lives, we have a couple rules about wasting less time. And by wasting time, I mean, this has got something of a pejorative thing, but generally, we want to spend less time on things that are not meaningful or important or enjoyable, right? However you happen to define that. And I know a lot of people, and particularly a lot of women, wind up with just numerous small tasks on their plates, whether it is, work-related tasks, filling out these forms for HR and returning these, emails that aren't urgent and aren't important, but you've got to, deal with it. And then the things at home as well, whether, filling out the permission slips, or God, thinking about them that I had today, like some child, they're having a soft pretzel fundraiser. And I'm sure if I don't fill out the form so he gets the pretzel, he's going to, feel like it's the end of the world. So of course I'm sitting there figuring it out. It's password protected and I have a password and I don't know what the password is. So I got to get it. It's just, it goes on. But, you can feel like you spend your life doing these things and they are not urgent. They are not important, but they still have to get done. And so we wind up feeling like, oh, I have this huge mental load, all these tasks. And, it can feel very oppressive. But the funny thing, I mean, each of them only takes a few minutes or maybe even a few seconds. So what we can do is we can batch them. We can put them in a small window of time that we have designated for all these small tasks. I try to do as many of these as possible on Friday. I've tried to leave Friday mostly open, and then I have my punch list on Friday that I work through. So if I find myself at some other point of the week being like, oh, I need to sign up for the soft pretzel sale, I'm like, no, Friday. It's going to happen Friday. I'm not doing it now, right? And so that allows me to protect more of my work hours, for instance, for deeper work, for things that are more important than the pretzel sale. People can do this with home tasks too, like designating a window. Say you do all your chores for the week from 10 to noon on Saturday morning. And by doing this, you force some efficiencies. Like if it didn't happen in that window, it probably wasn't the most important thing. So maybe you're not, dusting every baseboard up on the second floor. Like maybe you're just doing the stuff like cleaning the kitchen, getting the trash out, cleaning the bathrooms. That's it. We do that. But also it allows you to relax. Because if you find yourself looking at a dirty floor at some point other than that window, you can be like, no, there's a time for that. Saturday morning. Now is not that time. So I am allowed to have this guilt-free leisure time.
Yes. I really like that because there's so many little things, right? And then, just kind of looking because my planner's right in front of me. It's like, okay, all those doctor's appointments or, check-ins or whatever. It's like, okay, that's going to be on Friday or whatever day, versus like, oh, I can do this. So I can knock it off my list, right? Because I like to knock things off my list. But, making a doctor's appointment is not the same thing as working on your book proposal, right?
Yeah. I mean, they both have to be done, but you want to make sure that the book proposal has your energy, it has your focus, it has your best time, and that you're not constantly pulling yourself away from the book proposal. Be like, I got to go make that appointment. I got to go fill out that form. But the funny thing is sometimes we want to be pulling ourselves away. Like the batching the little things is also combating that little demon of procrastination. They're like, oh, I'm wrestling with this book proposal. I don't know how I want to shape this chapter. I don't know how I'm going to market this thing. Or I could go order that birthday present over on Amazon, right? And then it's done. Like you did it, you crossed it off the list and you feel really good about it. But sometimes it's better to spend your time wrestling with the more important matters. And by designating a window for these small tasks, you can keep yourself from reaching for the easy win and putting that off.
Right. Such a good reminder. And, one of the things you write about in the book is that happiness happens in hours, right? So it's not like, oh, I'll be happy when this happens. It's like my day-to-day decisions help bring happiness, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
They do. I mean, we often we're thinking like, does somebody have a good life? We're looking at certain things like, do they have a good job? Do they have a, seemingly happy family? Do they have a nice house? And those things are all great. But given that happiness is experienced in hours, sometimes even those good things can wind up making us not feel so happy in our hours. I mean, if your lovely house is very far from your good job, and so you're stuck in traffic for an hour each way, like you're going to be miserable. Like if your big house is, taking all this time that you have to put into cleaning and repairing and things like that, again, those aren't things that generally make people happy. And so, your hours are spent in ways that you don't like, or if much of your, kid time is spent on sort of, negotiating fights with everyone and not, doing anything with like just, policing screen time. I don't know. It just doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel like we're spending our hours well, particularly if we are also simultaneously exhausted from sleep deprivation and lethargic from not moving enough and all those other things. So, I want people to focus on how they spend their hours. Like, look at a day, look at what is in there that you will genuinely enjoy. Look at what things you are doing that make sure you have the energy to handle your responsibilities. Make sure you aren't spending tons of time on things that aren't important to you. And if you can, make sure that your hours fit those things, if they fit that rubric, your Tuesdays will feel a lot better. And when you upgrade your Tuesdays, you upgrade your entire life.
Well, that's what I like too about the subtitle, right? And make time for what matters. So it's not just like, oh, let's manage our time, so important, but it's also let's make sure we have time for the things that really matter to us and that are aligned with our values. I think that's such an important reminder.
Yeah, no, I mean, what's the point of managing time well if we're not using it for things that we want to do?
Totally. Well, let me ask you this. So the name of the podcast, obviously, Tranquility du Jour. So I'm wondering for you, how are you finding, I'm assuming it's these 9 rules, but probably more. How are you finding tranquility in your everyday or by Tuesday?
Yeah, so I am trying to follow these rules. I mean, honestly, when I do follow these rules, I do feel better. And it's so simple, but it's obviously the discipline of building habits into our lives. It's an ongoing project. But when I plan my weeks on Fridays, then I go into the next week feeling like, okay, there's a lot going on, but it looks doable. Like anything that I know I need to do, it has a time, it has a plan, and I think it will happen. When I go into the week having adventures that I know I am looking forward to, then life feels less like a slog, less like I'm just biding my time until the next thing. That I'm actually genuinely looking forward to things that are coming up. And so yeah, I mean, that's it. These 9 rules are the 9 rules for a reason. I really do think that when you try them, life is better. And we will never be perfect. There's never a week where all 9 I've just been firing on all cylinders, but when I do, it tends to be a good week.
And you have something coming up on the 18th.
Uh-oh, shoot.
Right? Your event.
That was
for pre-orders.
The pre-orders,
yes.
Yeah. Well, so if this is airing on, I was like, wait a minute. Okay, so if this episode is airing the day before the book actually launches, so if this book is on October 10th, if you do pre-order, you get an invitation to a webinar I'm doing for people who have pre-ordered the book, who have bought the book before October 11th. So if any of your listeners still want to get in on that in the next 24 hours or 12 hours, I guess they'll shut it off at midnight. But, please do. I would love to have people join me. We'll be talking more about the book. We will be, and I'll be answering questions. Maybe we can even figure out what everyone's favorite rule is. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Totally. Well, congratulations on this new book, Laura. I'm always proud. I always love seeing kind of what you're up to and what you're sharing. I send a lot of people to your website to get that grid. I don't know if you still have it up, but it's so helpful. And yeah, so I'm excited for the 18th.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.